tutorial time. I am making the 32 by 24 inch mat. The mat is comprised of 8-inch blocks. So if you are doing the 24 by 32, you need 12 blocks. If you're doing the 24 by 40, you need 15 blocks. And if you're doing the 24 by 48, you need 18 blocks. Now, just ignore mine a little bit. I added in some sashing in between my blocks, so mine is technically a little bit bigger. The next thing you want to do is gather the rest of your supplies. You're going to need a foam, and if you don't have a foam, you can use 2 layers of batting or 2 layers of fusible fleece. I frankened my foam. I like to use Basel foam. It is adhesive on both sides. However, I have some foam I want to get rid of. I have this Naked Pellon, which is not a fusible foam. So I thought I would use that for this. In order to franken my foam together, I just butt it up against each other, the 2 pieces, and then I take some fusible interfacing and I just create like a tape with it and use it to tape my 2 pieces together. It's easier if you have a little piece up at the top that you fuse and flip over, and it kind of just helps stabilize it a little. Then you're going to need, obviously, your blocks. You're going to need your backing. Also, when making this, you'll need some glue. I use 505 spray to glue my quilt top to the foam before I quilt it. And then you also will need a backing. And for my backing, I just used some squares, and did some patchwork squares. So now, after you have your mat quilted, you can go ahead and trim off all the excess. So now, I typically like a 3-inch binding. When I'm doing a quilt, I always use a 3-inch binding. If you want to use a 3-inch binding, you can do that. If you want to use a 2.5-inch binding, you can do that. But whatever kind of binding you're going to do, go ahead and make that now. You can go ahead and apply it only to the front side. Don't apply it yet to the back side. Okay, so make your binding, put your binding on, and affix it to the front side. All right, and just to show you, I did a 3-inch binding. I always hand stitch down. I big stitch down to do this entire thing, like hand bind it down. 45 minutes maybe, I don't know. But you're gonna go ahead and stitch it to the front using your regular seam allowance. I just kind of use to the width of my foot. And if you're using a 3-inch, you have so much excess, it kind of doesn't matter. And then this is going to get put underneath this binding, so do not attach it to the side. So you're going to take your 3.5-inch by 21, 22-inch strips, whatever size you want to make them, and you're going to put a woven interfacing on them. So I'm just going to use a plain old fusible woven interfacing. If you don't have woven, that's fine. Just use any type of fusible interfacing. And by woven interfacing, I mean like an SF 101 or something like that. Nothing too heavy. Now we're going to flip them right sides together, both strips. We're going to put them right sides together and sew it closed on the long side using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now we have these tubes. Using our tube turner, there we go. We're going to turn our tubes inside out, right side out, and then we're just going to go ahead and iron them down, making sure that we kind of wiggle that seam out. And then I just put that seam on the side. And then we want to take one of our ends from each strap, not both of our ends, just one of our ends from both straps and just tuck it down in there. And then top stitch across the top. So top stitch and then top stitch down both sides. And we're going to do this for both of our straps. So just repeat the process with the second strap. So now from the open end of your strap, which I'm actually going to clean that up a little bit. From the open end of your strap, mark 2 inches down. Then take your buckle, move it to that mark. Where is it? Oh, move it to the mark and fold it over just like that, okay? Now take it to your sewing machine and putting your presser foot right along this metal edge, sew a line here and sew a line here. So 2 parallel lines. And you get this. And the reason why you do it right next to your presser foot is so you get that line as close as possible, and your buckle doesn't move a lot. And you're going to repeat that for your other strap. You're going to measure 5 inches from each side, and you're going to make a mark. So this is 5 inches. Then you take your strap with your buckle on the outside and put it in here. So this is like 6 inches, 6.5 inches, okay? So now we have our other strap, and we're going to go to the other side. I have a mark of 5 inches over. I'm gonna put that where it's landing on like inch 6.5. So if you measure from here to here, it's 5 inches. From here to here, it's 6.5 inches. Now we're gonna take this over to our sewing machine, and we're going to sew these down, staying within our binding's seam allowance. Right. Got my straps attached, and now I'm just going to do my binding. If you are hand binding, just make sure that when you hand bind that you go all the way through the straps into your quilt sandwich. Otherwise it'll be funky. So you got to make sure you get all the way through your straps. Okay, so next you're going to need your backing fabric for the pockets and the back of your main pocket. So what I have is a piece of fabric that is approximately 15 by 14 or 15, and then it is fused to some fusible fleece. And then you take all 3 of your pockets, which are 9 by 8, 3 by 8, and 5 by 8, and put them all on the fusible fleece on the other side, and then just quilt this all at the same time and just get all your pockets made at the same time. So now this is all quilted, we're going to cut out all 3 of these pieces. You're going to cut this main piece right here to 8.5 by 7.5. So 8.5 wide, 7.5 tall. This pocket right here, you're going to cut to 7.5 wide by 2.5 inches tall. And then this pocket right here, you're going to cut to 7.5 inches wide by 5 inches tall. 5 inches tall by 7.5 inches wide. So now we're going to take 2.5 inch width binding and apply it across the top of our 5 inch high pocket and across the top and the bottom of our 2.5 inch high pocket. We're going to apply it here and here and then across this pocket. So now I have my binding applied and I'm gonna just flip them all over and top stitch down all 3 pieces of these bindings. So we're going to go 1 3/4 inch down. We're going to put that pocket right there, clip it into place. And then we're going to put this one, line it up directly across the bottom, and put that right there. We're going to go over to the sewing machine. We're going to stitch this down, and then we're just going to stitch around the perimeter about 1/8 of an inch. So now we have the sides tacked down, we have this pocket sewn on, and you are going to decide here how you want your pocket to be. So if you want to just leave this one big pocket, you can. If you want to make it multiple compartments, you can. I am going to split it into 3 compartments, and one of them, the middle one, I'm gonna kind of make the thinner of it because I want it to nicely house my scissors right in the center. And then this one, I like to not have that be anything at all because I have a ruler that I like to keep handy, and that is nice and it fits in there. So I'm gonna not do anything with that pocket, and I'm just gonna give myself 3 compartments here, again, with this one being kind of the slimmer and these being larger. But it's totally up to you. And the way you do it is you just top stitch up, over a touch, and then top stitch back down. So I'm going to make the middle one 2 inches. So I just have these little lines so I can go over to my sewing machine and just stitch right down those. Okay, so I have, as you can see, done 2 lines, giving myself a little pocket right here. And again, I started with 2 inches so that I have a little like sheath for my scissors to go in. And I put it in the center just so it doesn't cause my heaviest thing, which are my scissors, to be on the side and kind of droop it down. So I wanted to be able to house my heaviest thing right in the center. And then you do sew a little bit into the bottom of this pocket, but it's just a little bit. You still are giving yourself plenty of space to be able to have a 2.5 inch ruler. So now we are going to apply binding, 2.5 inch binding, all the way around this pocket. So I have my pocket made and bound, and I'm gonna go ahead and do some pockets or some buttons. If you wanna do Velcro, you can also just do Velcro and attach that at this point. But I'm going to do buttons. I'm gonna go 1 inch in from the edge of my binding. So now it's time to do your buttons. You can do a 1 inch button or any size button that'll fit. But I marked a line 1 inch from the edge of the inner edge of the binding, 1 inch, and then about 1/2 inch down, and then that was the line that I made for my buttonhole. And so now I'm going to go ahead and cut out these buttons so I can get the marks correct on my mat. So now I have my pocket done. I've got my buttonholes put in, and I want to decide where my pocket's going to hang. This is a 32 inch mat, so I want it to go all the way right here to the side because it's not a very big mat. And that's where my buttons are going to be. So I am going to just go through my buttonholes right here and make these marks, and that's where I want my buttons. So I am going to go ahead and sew down my buttons right there. Okay, so now I have my buttons sewn on and I've applied my pocket, and there you go. It is completely done.